Bouchra Nasri from good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Bouchra from the School of Public Health of University of Montreal. And before joining the public health, the School of Public Health, I used to work on extreme event modeling. So I did my PhD on water science modeling, and I used to work a lot on extreme flood, extreme heat wave events, and so. And then I met people from the observatory, what you see here, the Quebec Observatory of the Adaptation for Climate Change. And we started working on the impact of climate change on populations and the human health, including mental and physical health. So, So as you know already, that flooding events are increasing in the world due to climate change, and they are impacting human health. So they are impacting the physical health, so we can have more mortalities or more morbidities. We can also have an increase of risk for disease outbreak or even infectious disease, and we can also have other kind of infection. We can also have other impacts related to mental health. We can have the post-traumatic stress disorder. So if we have a flood in a certain area and you lose your house, or you have severe impact on your house, you might have like some post-traumatic stress disorder related to what you lose in this specific event. You can get an anxiety, and it is well documented in literature that some people will have even some anniversary like impact, that when it rains, they will like remember all the events related to flood. And you can also have all kind of stress. It's also related to domestic violence, children abuse. So when you have a very severe event, it tends to have like a lot of fights among partners, and then impact also children. It also have some impact over generations. So pregnant women who are under stress might also have a very severe impact for long-term impact on generations. So the children and their children might also have impacted by a flood event. And this is well documented in the work of Susan King at McGill, who studied a cohort for pregnant women over years, for floods and for other extreme events. So what kind of things that we can do to adjust for this? We can adapt. We have adaptation measures. So we can have preventive interventions, or we can have interventions post disaster, so that make us adjust, moderate, or cope with the risk. So this intervention can be structural adaptation measures. So we can modify the structure of our house. We can do any other structural adaptation. And we can also have non-structural strategies, which is more related to how to manage the disaster risk. So maybe if we have a flooding event, we can cut off the water, make some adjustment to adjust for the flooding event. We can also have some community-based intervention, which usually are after the flooding event. So the community comes together and try to find the solutions all together, so that improves the mental health of people. And this all are documented very well in the literature. So what makes people adhere to adaptation measures for floods? So there are several factors that are associated with the adherence of adaptation measures. So not all people will adhere to adapt to flood measures, to adapt to some good behavior for flood measures. So what makes them adhere to the adaptation measure? It can be socioeconomic factors, so their age, education level, or the income. If you are rich, you can go and do some structural changes. But if you are not that rich, you might not have the same flexibility to do structural adaptation measures. So you might have other things to do that make you far from the risk of mental health or physical health. What makes people also adhere is the perception of flood risk. So if people think that they are at risk of flooding, they will do what takes to adapt to flood. Their belief of living or not in flood-prone area. Not everyone knows that they are living in flood-prone area. When we did a survey, 30% of people even didn't know that they are in flooding area. So believing of living or not in flooding area will also make you adhere to some adaptation measures. The sense of belonging to local community. So if you care about your community, if you like your house where it's located, if you like Waterloo or your area in Waterloo, you will maybe say, okay, I will do some changes because I like my neighborhood and so. Also, the impact that flooding is having on physical and mental health will also make you think about it. And if you have some experience on flooding, if you get flooded before, you know what it takes, so it will makes you adhere to adaptation measures. So in collaboration with the Quebec Observatory for Adaptation for Climate Change, we did a survey of 3,900 participants, and most of them was in flood prone areas, and some of them was very close to flood areas. So we measure some adaptation scores, which goes from 0 to 15. So we ask people some question about are you doing some structural adaptation or non-structural adaptation to floods? And then we had the scores for each question. It's 15 list of 15 questions, and each one takes 0.1. And then we gather some other information about socioeconomic variables such as the age, the income, education, and we also have some other behavior variables linked to a belief of living in flood-prone area, flood experience, perception of risk, severity of flood impact on physical health, severity of flood impact on property, sense of belonging to the local community. And we constructed 4 groups. The first one is people who live in the flood area and have been living in the flood area for 15 years, and people who live in the flood area and have been living in the flood area for less than 15 years, and people who live in the periphery of the flood area for more than 15 years and less than 15 years. And why we constructed those groups is because that people who live in flood area for 15 years, they have experienced at least one time the flood. And then it's the same for the periphery. They might have a different way to perceive the risk depending on how long they live in the area. So we use some regression techniques to analyze the data. And then we get this kind of result. So basically, if you are in a flood area and you have been living for more than 15 years, so you tend to, your flood experience will have a huge impact on your behavior. So because you have an experience of flooding, you will say, okay, I will adapt because I don't want to leave this samely. But if you didn't experience the flood, or maybe didn't experience enough, so your flood risk perception will have a huge impact on your behaviors. And if you are in the periphery, your beliefs will also have an impact. So what we did after that, the observatory was very interested to know if we want to maximize our adaptation, what kind of pathway we can take. So, for example, we can see the 10 best pathway to adapt to flood. So basically, if you have at least one experience of flooding, you might have a good chance to adapt to flood. And then you can have a kind of other variable that impact differently from one profile to another. So we got the same result for, I still have time, okay. We got the same result for people who are living in this, which one? In the very, no, that's people who have been living for less than 15 years. So the perception play a very good role here. And you have also all kinds of other variables that they can be mixed with that and give you the best profile or pathway to adapt to climate change, to floods. And we can have other results for those who are in the periphery. So I'm going faster. It's one minute. Okay. So as a conclusion, so we study the behavior of people in Quebec for flood extreme events. So we think that flood experience, perceived risk, and belief of living in flood-prone area are the best predictors of adhering to adaptation measures, and those play different role dependent if we are in the flood area or if we live enough in the flood area or not. And I do believe it will be necessary for intervention aimed at the population to be formulated considering those different groups because they have different way and different predictors for each group. So thank you.
Thank you, Bouchra. That was very well timed.
Thank you.
So our next speaker is Rodrigo Costa. Great, thank you.
I think I have to share.
Yeah.